that's not your name. You will always be much more to me.
Welcome to Educate for Life. I'm your host, Kevin Conover. We're on AM 1170, The Answer in San Diego every Sunday from 4 to 5 p.m. You can also stream the show at am1170theanswer.com. My website is educateforlife.org. I want to start off the show tonight by talking about a decision. This was a House Judiciary Committee report. It was made March 27th, 1854. And there was a controversy over chaplains in the military. It says that after a full year of exploring the possibility of removing chaplains from the military and removing Christian principles from government, the House Judiciary Committee declared, had the people, that is the Founding Fathers, during the Revolution, a suspicion of any attempt to war against Christianity, that revolution would have been strangled in its cradle. At the time of the adoption of the Constitution and its amendments, the universal sentiment was that Christianity should be encouraged, but not any one denomination or sect. The report continued, in this age there is no substitute for Christianity. That was the religion of the founders of the Republic, and they expected it to remain the religion of their descendants. 2 months later, they added, the great, vital, and conservative element in our system, what holds our system together, is the belief of our people in the pure doctrines and the divine truths of the gospel of Jesus Christ. That is from the House Judiciary Committee report, March 27th, 1854. Not something you hear about too often. And right now in our culture, there's a lot of controversy over what should and should not be said. And I thought it would be really interesting to have some chaplains from the military on the show this evening. And I'm very privileged to have John Feinberg. He's been a Navy chaplain for 6 years, 3 years with the Marines in Okinawa, and 3 years here in San Diego with the Helicopter Sea Combat Wing Pacific. Prior to being in the Navy, he served as a youth and missions and associate pastor in inner city Los Angeles for 9 years, and currently he's very busy, married with 4 kids. John, all under the age of?
4.
4, all under the age of 4. 4 kids under 4. That's intense.
Yes, sir.
John, thanks a lot for being on the show this evening.
Thank you. And just a quick correction.
Yeah.
John Freiberg.
Freiberg. I'm sorry.
I wish I was John Feinberg.
Okay.
I'm not quite that smart.
Okay.
But Freiberg.
John Freiberg.
No
I
problem.
apologize.
It happens a lot.
Just like fry a hamburger.
Okay. And the other fellow here talking in the background is Bob Freiberg, his father. And Bob, thanks a lot for being on the show.
Oh, thank you, Kev.
Bob and John are a father and son chaplains, and that's not something you see that often. They're in the Navy, both as chaplains. Bob is an active duty Navy chaplain. He serves as the command chaplain at Miramar Marine Corps Air Station. His military duties as Navy chaplain included combat and operational tours with the Navy, Navy SEALs, Marines, and Coast Guard. He's got a million stories, and I'm really excited to allow him to share some of those tonight. He's also had the opportunity to teach, preach, and pray the gospel of Christ with over 1 million military, civilian, both foreign and domestic personnel in over 30 countries. Incredible. He's been on aircraft carriers out in the Iraqi desert. He's been on Humvees, not an aircraft carrier in the Iraqi desert. That would be weird. But
Yeah.
and he's been married for 38 years. He's also an adjunct professor at Southern California Seminary, associated with Shadow Mountain Church, and a huge, been a serving in the military for a long time, and also serving as a professor out there. So, guys, again, thanks for being on the show. I wanted to start off by asking you, this report that came out in 1854. What is your view of chaplains in the military? There's a lot of people out there that think to themselves, "Hey, what about the whole separation of church and state? You're paid by the government, and yet you've shared Christ with so many people."
We get that question quite often. But first of all, let me just kind of tell you, we're not here as official representatives of the United States Navy or the military chaplaincy and all that. We're just kind of telling you and sharing our story and some of the things that we've done and gone through that perhaps can encourage other people that are in the military that are Christians. The question that you have is a real valid one. If you go back to 1775, Congress, that's when the Chaplain Corps initially started. Congress knew that when you go out on a ship, you can't stop off at your local church in the middle of the ocean. So what they did is that's why they have chaplains. And so chaplains ever since, we were actually the second corps that was ever voted in. The first corps in the Navy that was voted in were the Marines. And then after they had the Marines, they figured, well, we've got to we certainly have to have and provide for some kind of religious freedom of these people to express their faith. So then that's why they ended up having the chaplain corps. And because the nation is basically, they basically don't want to back up one specific denomination. So what they do is they go to the civilian sector. And that's why in the chaplain corps, I think we have something like 150 different denominations that are represented. So in other words, we come from all walks, the inner city, the suburbs, the rural areas. And so we're from all the background of America as chaplains.
Now, when you are serving in the military and you said you have 150 different denominations, are you including denominations outside of Christianity also? And do you ever help people that aren't of the same religion as you?
Okay, well, that's a couple questions right there.
Yeah.
First of all, the answer is yes and yes. Okay, what we do is basically, I would say about 95% of the people that are chaplains are professing Christian.
Okay.
But again, that's a huge broad spectrum. You've got very liberal chaplains, you've got very conservative chaplains. But we also have other denominations. We've got a couple Muslim, we've got some Jewish, we've got. I know we had a Buddhist, but I think that chaplain got out of the military a couple years ago. But anyways, yeah, we've got pretty much it's across broad spectrum of America.
Yeah.
And we've got that in the chaplain corps too. Now the question is do we provide services to everybody? And the answer is yes. Okay. When we do a worship service, like I'm the Protestant chaplain at Miramar, I preach and teach just like a Baptist preacher. I get up there and the service is that way, and so I'm able to preach and teach whatever I want. Now, what happens though during the week when people come in, we do a large amount of counseling, and so when people come in, they can be an atheist, they can be agnostic, they can be any other religion, stuff like that. And most of the questions that they have basically are just, everybody has those kind of questions. They're going through depression. They're going through, they're having marital problems. They're having all sorts of things. They're having command issues. Yeah. And you see, as a chaplain, what happens, they come in, first of all, is we provide something that nobody else does. Because when they come in and we close that door, it's completely confidential. Okay? There's no disclosures that they have to sign, and if they say certain things, like other counselors, what happens is they're mandatory reporters for certain events. But you see what happens, it's a good, safe environment. They come in, and under the auspices of basically of the confidentiality, we're able to peel the onion on what's really bothering them. And as we're doing that, it's a safe area, and they know they're not going to get reported. Because there's a lot of other people that if they go to counselors, the other ones, if they start talking about certain things, they're going to be reported and they could possibly go to jail and be prosecuted.
So the chaplain has this kind of almost kind of like a counselor would, in a way where they have a confidentiality that allows security and safety for the person that's
completely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I was going to ask John if you wanted to add to that, but do you guys have to get some sort of a professional counseling degree of some sort, or how does that work?
Well, just to add one more thing to what my dad said.
Sure.
If someone came who was another faith group than what we are, and wanted some particular, faith ritual or something done for them, provided for them.
Yeah.
One of our jobs is to help facilitate that. So I'm not going to lead a Buddhist meditation service, but if there's a Buddhist chaplain or if there's a Buddhist temple down the road, I can connect them and point them to there. So part of our job is to protect the First Amendment rights to freedom of religion for all,
and facilitate
it, yeah. Right? And they wouldn't want us to do those kinds of things for them if we weren't from that faith group anyways.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
So
well, I want to get to this other question.
Yeah.
You guys, I know, are going to have a ton of stories to share. I'm very, very excited to hear your stories. But my guests tonight are Bob and John Freiberg, both military...
Freiberg.
Fried
hamburger. There you go.
Freiberg are both military chaplains and serving currently as chaplains in the military, both dedicated Christians. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
What do leading local restaurants have in common? They depend on Express Fix Coffee for new and used coffee and espresso machines, repairs, and affordable monthly service. Dave Martin and his local team provide water filtration services too. Call San Diego's best espresso repair company, serving your home and business. Learn more online at expressfixcoffee.com. Call Express Fix Coffee at 619-867-3853. 619-867-3853.
Hi, this is Jason Hall, president of Team Home Loans, a branch of Synergy One Lending. I just want to take this opportunity to thank Kevin Conover for the profound impact he's had on mine and my wife's spiritual life, as well as being an incredible teacher while our kids were his students. His knowledge and passion have taught us all how important it is to be defenders of our faith. It's our honor and privilege to support Kevin and his show. It is our sincere hope and prayer that you will continue to learn to be defenders of your faith through Kevin's radio show and through his Educate for Life teachings. Thank you, Kevin, from the Hall family and Team Home Loans.
Add historic American beauty to your home today with genuine Amish furniture. It's built in the USA from solid cherry wood with a bourbon finish. Or choose alternative woods and finishes to accent your home's decor. You'll find it all at Tucker's Valley Furniture. For over 65 years, the Tucker family has served San Diego County. Still family owned. Cash and Carry and Tucker's Valley Furniture. 2 stores, both right across the street at Main and Mollison and El Cajon. Learn more at tuckersvalleyfurniture.com.
You're the anchor of my hope, the only one who's in control. I will.
Thanks for listening today. This is Educate for Life. I'm your host, Kevin Conover. My 2 guests this evening are a father-son duo here, John Freiberg and Bob Freiberg. And Bob is the father, John is the son. Both military chaplains, served a lot of experience in the military. And I wanted to start off, Bob, by asking you, you were referencing Benjamin Franklin and the start of the chaplains in the military. And what were you saying about that?
Well, essentially what happens when it comes to the Constitution and Christianity, people always say and use the argument, and this has basically been a recent argument. You know, they say, well, you know, since the Constitution doesn't mention anything about Christianity, therefore, you know, religion is just not a part of it. Well, if you actually go through and read about the minutes, and you have the reading from James Madison, he's the only one that was there that wrote about it, and he's got a book about 3 inches, 4 inches thick, and he talks the whole story. And they were at an impasse, and in this impasse, basically, they didn't know what to do. So finally, Benjamin Franklin got off his bear. It's a little place where he was just laying down because he was very, very old, so he couldn't stand up and stay up much. So he got up, and of course, when he said, everybody listened. And this is basically what he said. And I'm going to paraphrase. And I always use this to people that use that argument, because what happened is he got up and he said that when we were going through the American Revolution, we prayed and got up every single day, and we prayed that the Father of Lights, which is, of course, a quote from James, he said, we prayed that the Father of Lights would help us, we would go through, and we would win the day. And he said, a day didn't go by that we didn't pray. And he says, now all of a sudden what happened is, you know, we have a country, we're not doing this. And he said the famous quote where he says, God is concerned about the affairs of men. And because of that, he proposed that every single session of Congress, the House and at that time it was the Senate, that it starts off with a prayer. And that's why to this day, the exact same thing goes on. And this was part of the Constitutional Convention that they did. And so it became part of the woof and fabric of the congressional record. Now, the other thing that I want people to know and understand is that even though the federal Constitution doesn't say anything about it, every single state constitution, if you go through and Google it, doesn't matter, even Hawaii and the more liberal states and the more recent ones, they mention deity in there. You know, it says we've come together. Some of them mention, God by name. Some of them, if I remember right, a couple of them actually mention Jesus Christ.
And this is really because the federal government wasn't to take a position on religion, but that didn't mean the states couldn't.
Yeah, that was part of it. But the thing is that's a fallacious argument that, the Constitution doesn't talk and address government. Now, the whole idea why we're here is because as chaplains, the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law for the establishment of a religion. And what that essentially is saying is we're not going to have a church-state relationship like the Church of England. That's what it originally historically meant.
Yeah.
It didn't mean that, we're going to drop kick God out of the public affair. So anyways, the second part is nor prohibit the free exercise thereof. And that's why we're here, is because you take away the First Amendment right of all the sailors, of all the Marines and everything. You put them on these ships. You go to a place where they can't go to the local church. They don't have any place to worship. So that's why we're there.
So in a way, if you were not there, that would almost be taking away their ability to exercise that First Amendment right, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, so John, you graduated from Christian high school. How did you know you wanted to become a military chaplain?
This is going to be fun.
It's a long story.
Was that something you knew, or was that something
negative?
Negative.
Last thing he wanted to be was a chaplain like that.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of people say like, "Oh, you're just doing the family business there," but that's not the case.
Not at all.
So,
in fact, I discouraged it.
All right. Short version is, I was a punk when I was a kid. I hated everything. I hated God. I hated my family. I hated my dad. I hated the military because the military, took my dad away from me a lot of times, even though I hated my dad. So
you hated it. It was a love-hate relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I was just a punk, and I came to Christian High, and I continued to be a punk there. And in fact, I think I got suspended in like my second week.
It took 1 week, and I got the phone call.
Anyways, so through the faithfulness of one of my Bible teachers and his son, specifically Derek Bruninger, who's Paul's brother. So,
oh wow! Paul's teaching there now too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyways, he led me to the Lord my senior year. And so at that point, my whole life changed. The whole direction of my life changed. And I had a love for the Lord. He wasn't just a ticket out of hell that I kind of assented to. He was my Lord. He was my King that I wanted to serve. And so I went to college up in Los Angeles, and during that time got involved in inner city ministry, and still wasn't clear I wanted to be in ministry full time. But through that church in Los Angeles, just fell in love with ministry, and was there for quite a while, and was mainly working with gang youth. And we reach out to them. They come into our youth group, and then eventually we basically started a English congregation out of second generation immigrants who, but then a lot of them, to escape the city, were joining the military, and specifically the Marine Corps. And they'd write back to me. We'd stay in touch and tell me about how hard it is being away from their church, being away from people that were going to disciple them in the Word and encourage them. And so kind of my heart for military ministry grew. And then obviously, through that time, my relationship with my dad got a lot better. And one thing led to another, and it's a season. I don't think I'm going to make a career out of it like my dad has. Eventually, we want to go overseas and do missions work, my wife and I. So within the next couple of years is probably what we're moving towards. But
what part of the world?
Southeast Asia is as specific as I can get on the air.
I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, but we've already made some steps towards that. So excited about that. But for what it's been a great opportunity.
Yeah.
To just love people, share the gospel with them, and
in your experience, are the men served well by having somebody that they can go to and I mean, do you feel that there would be a big loss if the chaplains were not there and available for them?
That's a great question. I've met some really great chaplains, and I've met some really bad chaplains. So it really depends on the chaplain. In theory, the idea of the chaplain corps, I think, is essential.
Yeah.
But it really depends on the chaplain, because some chaplains are worthy to be trusted, and some are not. So
Is there a vetting process for becoming a chaplain in that regard? I mean, it's because you don't have like a pastor overseeing, who becomes a deacon or something like that.
Right.
How does that work?
You want to?
No, you go ahead and
Okay.
address that.
Yeah. So
Because you just went through the process.
yeah, I'm a little more recent. Although it was 6 years ago.
Just went through the.
Yeah.
It tells you how long he's been in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, you have to be in. You have to have a MDiv, a master's degree level, degree, and then you have to be in ministry for, I think, at least 3 years.
3 years, yes.
And
Pastoral experience.
Right, pastoral experience. And then you can start the application process. And then it's, there's a couple different tracks. You can do what's called the chaplain candidate program, where you kind of get in and then you get your ministry experience during reserve time type thing. But the normal way is you have your experience, you have your degree, then you apply, and then there's multiple steps
So
to
it's
that.
a little bit more involved than you can't just go right out of high school. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got to go to DC, get interviewed by a panel of chaplains, and it's quite the process. Then you got to be commissioned as an officer. So
Okay.
Yeah.
My guests tonight are Bob Freiberg and John Freiberg, a father and son chaplains that serve in the military, and we're just hearing their story and what they've been through and how they get the opportunity to share the gospel with those who are serving our country and potentially laying their lives on the line for our country. So big blessing. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Before I bring my need, I will bring my heart.
Not all home inspections are created equal. Joe DeMars and his team at Housemaster have performed inspections in San Diego for 22 years plus and performed over 10,000 inspections for commercial, multiple family, apartments, and residential. Call before you buy or sell. You'll have confidence knowing the true condition of the property. Call 619-660-7866, sandiego.housemaster.com. Home inspections done right, guaranteed. 619-660-7866.
How can you live in San Diego and miss out on enjoying the water? Fast Lane Kayaking sells popular Hobie Cat kayaks that you pedal, not paddle. That means your hands are left free for fishing and fun. Just throw these on your roof rack. They're light and they're easy to use and maintain. Just rinse them off. Try one free on a demo ride. For 36 years, Ron and Debbie Lane have served San Diego with fun, family-friendly water sports of all kinds. Learn more. FastLaneSailing.com. 619-222-0766.
No more hiding, no more stalling. I hear you calling me, and I'm coming.
Thanks for tuning in to Educate for Life. I'm your host, Kevin Conover. We're on AM 1170, The Answer in San Diego, every Sunday, 4 to 5 p.m. And you can stream the show at am1170theanswer.com. My website's educateforlife.org. If you like the show, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes. You can also watch the show actually on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel where you can actually see what we look like here. Yep, we're waving to the camera here. And
You want to explain about the uniform?
yeah, so John has his uniform on here. He's the son. He's real responsible.
That's right.
Bob, on the other hand, no, I'm just kidding. Hey, that's a total joke, not reality at all. Why? What happened here, guys?
Well, John and I were talking about coming into the show yesterday, and what had happened is I said, make sure you wear your uniform. And he says, well, I was going to wear my civilian. And I said, well, so I wasn't going to sit there and argue with him. So I figured, okay, if I wore the uniform and he was in civilian, it would make him look bad. Well, so I figured, okay, we'll both be civilian. Well, of course, I'm in civilian now, and what happens? We always, when you do things like this in the military, you always wear your uniform. Okay. Well, anyways, as you can see, John's wearing his, and I'm not wearing mine.
So the real version is,
Give me a break.
at the end of the conversation, I said, "We'll see." All right, so I never said I was going to wear my civilian clothes.
right.
And I decided to be gracious and accommodate. and so...
Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
Bob's retiring soon anyway, so it doesn't matter. So
Yeah,
we're all
what are they
good.
going to do? They're going to give me a bad haircut and send me to Iraq?
Yeah.
You know? That's already
So-
happened, so not a problem.
Yeah, so that's my next question here, guys, is what kind of stories do you have where, you're, as far as I understand it, you're not actually involved in actual combat, but you are there right in the trenches wherever they are going.
Well, see, that's the difference, too, is between us and regular counselors, because we go where they go. We deploy. We go on ships. For instance, I've broken the sound barrier in jets. I've been deep in the ocean on subs. Been on carriers and everything, and so we go where everybody else goes. And those are the times, because we're there, you walk through the spaces and they go, "Hey, chaps, do you have a minute?" So then, we're right there. We're able to talk with the folks. And
that's kind of like Jesus and the disciples. It's like, wherever they go,
Yeah.
it's right there, living with them, eating with them, breathing with them.
we call it ministry of presence. But the thing is, you're absolutely right. And that's how you deal with them. We're not isolated from them. And so because of that, that's why, we get a chance to talk with atheists and agnostics, people of different faiths. And because we're able to do that and we're rubbing shoulders with them, that's where all the interaction comes from.
Yeah.
And it's usually very fruitful.
Yeah, I mean, they say, even in parenting, not that this is like a parenting relationship, but in any relationship where you're kind of mentoring, discipling, you have to take advantage of the moments where you're living and interacting. It's not all this theoretical, just talk. It's actually got to be lived out. And so they actually get to see you living out your Christianity in very adverse circumstances, to say the least. You, Bob, you mentioned that you're actually mentioned in several books because of some of the experiences you've been through. Can you share with us a little bit about that? This book here, Fearless, The Undaunted Courage and Ultimate Sacrifice of Navy SEAL Team 6 Operator Adam Brown, and some others.
Well, I've had the opportunity and privilege of basically one of the things when you're in the Navy, you're on the cutting edge of history. And so a lot of these guys that movies have been made about, I actually knew them and talked about them and, dealt with them day by day and moment by moment. And that's the fun part about it because, you can bring a different perspective in their life. Now, I recommended that book to you because it's really interesting because Adam is the story of a guy that he's not only a Christian, but he's a committed father, he's a committed husband, committed American, but basically he overcame all sorts of obstacles. And it's the idea that through Christ I can do all things. And he first of all had a lot of trouble even getting into the Navy. He had to get a waiver because he was a drug addict. So then once he got into the Navy, then he figured, well, maybe I'll try another hurdle. So he became a SEAL. And then as a SEAL, he ended up, just all sorts of things happened. One of them, he lost the sight in one eye from an accident. Another one, he lost his trigger finger. And it's a story about overcoming anything, overcoming obstacles. And so he ended up becoming an operator in SEAL Team 6.
That's fantastic. That book, if anybody's, if you're listening and you're interested in reading an incredible book about a guy who, overcame a lot of obstacles, who was a dedicated Christian, the book is Fearless. It's a New York Times bestseller, The Undaunted Courage and Ultimate Sacrifice of Navy SEAL Team 6 Operator Adam Brown. And definitely recommend you check it out. So you were actually you were a chaplain for the SEALs for a while.
Yes, I was the force chaplain.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically all the chaplains. At that time, we only had four chaplains for all the SEALs, but there was a lot less SEAls at this time. They've since grown because of the war. And
how many SEALs were there at that time?
If I remember right, I think there was 3,000.
So 4 chaplains for 3,000?
That was the support. That was the support and all that. There were 2 on the West Coast and 2 on the East Coast.
Okay.
So
that's a lot of work for 4 guys.
It was, and very intense. But I wouldn't trade it for anything else. I mean, it was wonderful, wonderful ministry because there's something about when guys are going through what they did, you have a real open forum. I mean, they'll listen to things because some of the stuff they've been through, it affects everybody. Just keep in mind, SEALs are people just like everybody else. The thing is they have certain skills that exceed, and they are good at what they do.
Yeah.
The training. But again, I still have some SEALs that are good friends to this day.
That's fantastic. And what are some of the most memorable moments for you, or that you can share, where you were either you had the opportunity to share with somebody in a pretty intense way, or an experience where you yourself were on your knees praying, God, hey, get us out of this situation?
Well, how it kind of started is when I was with the SEALs, I remember the commanding officer of one of the squads came to me and he said, Chaps, I got this guy. He's retired. He's a Vietnam veteran. Can you help him out? And so I said, sure. The guy talked to me. And I just sat there, and it was a 4.5 one-way conversation. And he talked and talked and talked. And I was just sitting there, and I'm just going, Lord, help me out. I just, this is incredible. And the stuff he told me, I had never heard before. I mean, I said, I didn't even know this stuff existed, the stuff he went through and experiences. He didn't know how to go through it, and it was obvious. And this is after 20 years.
When you say the stuff he went through, you're talking about the combat experiences he had?
Combat experiences and what he had done, what he had experienced, what he had seen, friends that had died. And so he still didn't know how to process it. He didn't know how to put it through. I mean, after all these years, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. He was drinking heavily. We call it self-medicating. And so, anyways, what happened is essentially at that time, I told him, I said, well, let me tell you, there's a different way of looking at things. Are you religious? And he says, well, I grew up in the church, but I haven't done that. It didn't do any good. And he had lost his faith. And so what we did is we walked through and we talked about the gospel and the power and basically forgiveness. And forgiveness was a big thing, because in combat, sometimes people do things that they really regret afterwards, and it's a would've, could've, should've. And that to me also, that I found out in my research later on, is that the guilt just eats people up. And there's no psychology, there's no cognitive behavior therapy that a person can go through that takes care of that, because it's a values neutral based kind of approach. But if you take a spiritual standpoint and say, well, there is a right and wrong, and let me tell you, there's forgiveness, and the forgiveness is, of course, through Christ.
Yeah, and somebody's got to be there to offer that forgiveness too.
Yeah, and so what had happened is this guy got better, and I still remember the very next day he called me over. He was telling me basically, I won't go into details what he had told me because it was so bad. Yeah. But what happened is, after I had witnessed to him and talked to him, and he did become a Christian, he trusted Christ as the Savior, and the very next day he says, Chaps, that was the first good night's sleep I've had in over 20 years.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And so, he was a completely different guy, and so his life completely changed. And I still remember talking to his wife, and she says, what did you do to my husband? I mean, where is he? I mean, so that started it. So all of a sudden what happened is I got more business than what I could handle. And I was way out of my league. And so at this time, that's when I went back to school, and I got my doctorate and did a lot of research in this kind of stuff.
Okay. That's awesome. My guests tonight are John Freiberg and Bob Freiberg, father and son chaplains in the military. And stay with us. We're going to be right back. We're going to talk more about what the military needs. How can you pray for the veterans? How can you pray for our service personnel out there around the world and here in our country? We'll be right back.
We've been given a call.
When you need tires or service, count on Conover Tires, Wheels, and Service in Oceanside for a full range of affordable options and all the brands you trust. See their great customer reviews and special offers online. Hours Tuesday through Friday, 7:30 to 5:30, and Saturdays, 7:30 to 5. Call Dan and his team at 760-439-1631. Conover Tires, Wheels, and Service, 2405 Oceanside Boulevard in Oceanside, 760-439-1631.
Do you have one-button espresso machines in your home or business? They make delicious coffee drinks, but they're not maintenance-free. Express Fix Coffee is San Diego's source for coffee and espresso machine repair, sales, and service. Call Dave Martin at Express Fix Coffee for new and used espresso machines, repairs, parts, and accessories. They'll save you time and money. Call Express Fix Coffee at 619-867-3853. Learn more at expressfixcoffee.com.
Then going back and forth, from doing right to doing wrong, because we were taught that's who we are. Well, come on.
Welcome back to Educate for Life. I'm your host, Kevin Conover. We're on AM 1170, The Answer in San Diego. My website's educateforlife.org. And that website has all kinds of resources for helping you make good decisions and looking at the Bible and saying, okay, in light of the Bible, what should I do in this particular situation? And my guests tonight, Bob Freiberg and John Freiberg, are both military chaplains who are trying to help soldiers deal with a lot of the issues that they face that are unique to their lives. And if you know anything about the military at all, you know that there's a lot of trauma that's experienced by people who serve in the military. A lot of people go through a lot of different things. I have quite a few relatives who were in some pretty intense situations. And so I wanted to start off this segment by asking you, John, what for our listeners out there, what can they pray for? How can they help or encourage through prayer or even other methods? What do the veterans need?
Yeah, I mean, these are going to be kind of broad brush things, but I would say just reach out and spend time talking with them, listening, just being a friend. A lot of these young Marines, young sailors, it's the first time away from home. They've never been to a big city. They've never been overseas. Wherever you're at, reach out to them and try to connect with them. I think also the church can do a lot for these veterans, bringing them in, incorporating them into the body, into the family life of the church.
Now, is there a way that the church can actually, kind of go out there and rather than waiting for them to come to the doors, more be, more welcoming in reaching out?
Right. Again, it kind of depends on the context. I'm thinking San Diego, just because there's a huge military community here. Yeah. And there's also a ton of great churches in San Diego. Working through the chaplains, that's a great start. And because a lot of times I have people coming in for counseling, and I have churches to recommend, but a lot of times, they're in East County and they live in the barracks on base and they don't have a car. And so just getting creative. There are some good churches. So
maybe churches up in Oceanside, that area? Or
Oceanside, in IB, close to Coronado, 32nd Street. Okay. All those areas, yeah. Okay. And there are some churches that are doing that. Yeah. The key is, I think, just individual relationships, so discipleship, teaching these junior sailors, as well as sailors that have families. That's a huge one too. When they deploy, they're gone 6, 9, 11 months at a time.
And a mom's home with the kids.
Home with the kids in a place that they've never been before.
Deployments are getting longer and longer now.
Right. Why is that?
Well, it's cheaper.
Right. Oh, okay. Than to flying people back and forth all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So supporting the family is huge.
So are you feeling the military cuts? Is that
oh yeah,
having an impact as far as
not so much John because he's operational, but like with me because I'm at the chapel. Chapel programs were the last in the food chain when it comes to the chaplain corps. And for instance, when I first got there 3 years ago, we had billets for 4 chaplains. Well, now I'm it. We're an easy target. We get cut. So that's just the way it is. But again, people aren't coming into the military like they used to. When the economy is bad, people like to flock to the military. When the economy's good, well then it's harder to keep them.
Sure.
So that's one of the issues too. But for various reasons, that's what it is. One of the things that building on what John was saying, I still remember it was very, very hard during the Iraqi war, and Afghani war, is that you had people that they would be deployed for 6 months in a war zone. They'd come back, and they'd have to do workups because in 6 months they had to go back again. Mm-hmm. So the whole pattern then, when they came back, they hadn't processed what they had been through, but because of the high operational tempo, it created all sorts of havoc on family. A lot of divorces, a lot of marriage problems, things like that. And so that's John dealt a lot of counseling that when he was in Okinawa, with Marines that were doing that.
Okay. Now, is that what you're seeing primarily? Is when somebody comes to you, are they looking for help for marriage struggles or kind of PTSD stuff, or what is it, or is it just all over the board?
Right. So when I was with the Marines, a lot of it was combat-related issues, coming back from deployment, working with the recon guys, the Special Forces, Marine Corps guys, EOD, explosive ordnance, that saw some crazy things. And the thing about warfare today is you could be getting shot at today and then tomorrow you're back home, because it used to be like in World War II, you get on a boat and you talk about it with your unit for the next month as you're sailing home.
Kind of more like a debrief, kind of a
right,
de-stressing kind of.
Right. And so one of the things that I would do in Okinawa is I'd take these units and take them on a retreat and try to help them process, or at least give them some tools. And one of the things that often came up, and this again goes back to your previous question about how can listeners and how specifically can the church reach out to these veterans, is give them a solid foundation in the gospel. One of the main things that people struggle with when they go into combat and they come out, from my experience, is the idea of justice. How could a good God allow this? How could this be okay? How can he have let this happen to me or to my buddy who got shot? Or how could he deal with me who did whatever horrible thing I did? You know? And so this idea of justice and bringing them to the fact that God cares about justice, God will deal with this in a just way.
Yeah.
So whatever sin, whatever grievance, whatever happened will be dealt with either on the cross as he pays for it himself, or in eternity in hell. And so just kind of pointing them to that idea that, the God of the Bible is not just this, warm, fuzzy, hippie Jesus who wants to give you a hug.
Yeah.
He is a God of wrath. He's a God of justice. And that seems to resonate with especially a lot of the younger Marines and sailors who have kind of been raised in an evangelical culture in America that doesn't talk about the wrath of God. And then here they see the wrath of man right in the face, and they don't know how to deal with it.
That's a really interesting point, that our culture has so dimmed down the justice of God,
right,
and that it's almost like, hey, people get away with things.
Right.
That's very interesting.
Well, people, one of the things that happens too is people that live in a worldview without God, they go through these experiences and they can't put it into perspective that makes any sense.
The puzzle pieces just don't fit.
Yeah, it just, it's an existentialist type of religion and feeling, and so they don't have answers. So then when they finally come to us and we explain it in that thing, because we're created in God's image, deep down, like John said, it resonates. They know, they understand deep down, even though I may not believe it, this is something I do understand, because that's who we are as people.
Yeah.
That's how we're wired.
We're moral beings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. My guests this evening are John Freiberg and Bob Freiberg, two great guys, really love the Lord and really love this country and really love the guys serving the country and the women serving this country. Real blessing to have them on. We have one more segment left. Stay with us. We're going to continue to talk about a little bit about what the veterans need and what's the next steps for both these guys and where are they going in life and how they see the Lord moving them. So we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Hi, this is Jason Hall, president of Team Home Loans, a branch of Synergy One Lending. I just want to take this opportunity to thank Kevin Conover for the profound impact he's had on mine and my wife's spiritual life, as well as being an incredible teacher while our kids were his students. His knowledge and passion have taught us all how important it is to be defenders of our faith. It's our honor and privilege to support Kevin and his show. It is our sincere hope and prayer that you will continue to learn to be defenders of your faith through Kevin's radio show and through his Educate for Life teachings. Thank you, Kevin, from the Hall family and Team Home Loans.
In 1947, Gordon Tucker began serving San Diego County families. Today, the family tradition continues with 2 stores, Tucker's Valley Furniture and Cash and Carry, both right across the street in El Cajon at Main and Mollison. Whether you want today's modern, eco-friendly furniture or authentic Amish furniture from solid cherry wood built in America, let the Tucker family serve your family. Learn more at tuckersvalleyfurniture.com, a proud sponsor of Educate for Life with Kevin Conover.
You're the anchor of my hope, the only one who's in control. I will.
Welcome back to Educate for Life. I'm your host, Kevin Conover. My guests tonight are John Freiberg and Bob Freiberg. Bob is John's father, and John, Bob, you told me earlier that John is kind of a miracle child, and really in more ways than one, right? So you weren't expecting to be able to even have a child, and now
Exactly.
now John, you've got 4 kids, and so pretty amazing, just your lives in general, your testimonies, what you guys have been through, pretty exciting. So you did your doctorate in PTSD, in dealing with PTSD, is that correct?
Well, basically what it was is, like I had shared with you earlier, that I was overwhelmed because I didn't know how to handle a lot of these stories and these veterans who were SEALs during Vietnam. So what I did is I ended up, I did start doing some research. I started talking to people in Special Forces in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, and they all had a thread. And I found out those that had a faith background handled life and adjusting to life a whole lot better than those that didn't. And everybody has their own faith and how they look at it and things like that. So what I did then is I went to seminary and got my doctorate and researched it and did more interviews. And basically what I found out is in wartime PTSD, essentially it's a spiritual issue, and it's not a psychological one. It's a spiritual issue. And this is one of the things that those chaplains that have been in combat that basically handle it like a spiritual issue, the guys that they counseled got better, even the ones that were not necessarily religious.
So break that down for us. What do you mean by a spiritual issue? I'm very curious.
Well, the root of the problem is what happens is, and see, this is one of the things, when these guys go to the counselors, oftentimes what happens, the counselors don't have any combat experience or they don't have any military experience. And, basically most of the stuff that they have is experience out of a book. Or, maybe they've been doing this for a while. But the thing is sometimes they're not even religious. So, and again, they can't bring up moral issues. It's neutral.
Yeah, because if you're being paid by the state and you're not a chaplain, you're supposed to be
exactly
neutral.
Yeah, you can't make value judgments because oftentimes there's three ways that these guys in combat have been affected. First of all, is sometimes if you kill somebody, which is what we're trained to do. I mean, the Marines do a wonderful job in teaching and training people how to do what they do, and they're the best in the world at what they do. But once they pull that trigger and they kill somebody, then they think about it afterwards. For instance, I had a gunny. He had suffered from PTSD. This is in the first Gulf War, and he says, I bought into the party line, hook, line, and sinker. I shot this guy. I killed him. It was at the end of the war, and I did what I did. And he says, I was elated. But about a year or two later, I figured I actually killed somebody. And he started thinking about it. And so what you do is you go through and you process this, and you've got a different perspective that's non-military. And what happens is you have to deal with that. And that's guilt. The guilt comes in. And
so that's the spiritual aspect is what you're saying.
That is a spiritual issue. Now, how do you deal with guilt? Now, guilt...
Just to clarify this, because if it weren't spiritual, there wouldn't be guilt.
Exactly.
Because the lack of spirituality is there's no morals, is what you're saying. And so because we feel guilt, this is the spiritual conscience kind of thing happening here.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I've gone through and theologically defined that in great detail, because the Bible talks a lot about that, and the words that entailed. But the thing is, what happens now is you've got a morality. In other words, there's a right and a wrong. And a lot of the problems that people have is theodicy. They don't know how to deal with the question of evil. John mentioned a little bit about that. But the thing is, these guys have this guilt, and they don't know what to do it. They don't know how to treat it.
They don't know how to get rid of that.
And you see...
And guilt will kill you.
cognitive behaviorism, is off the premise that you can't make value judgments. And so because of that,
you can't even tell somebody that they were wrong for killing somebody.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, not only that, and then there's also guilt that survivors, some of the people, all my friends were killed except for me. That's survivor's guilt. Another one is sometimes you make a decision that causes somebody else to get killed. And then that's guilt too. And so what you do, you bring to the table, okay, how do you deal with guilt? Well, there is a sin that we've committed that Jesus Christ didn't pay for on the cross.
Wow.
And so what happens is the forgiveness is an extremely powerful tool in these kind of things. And once they see that and realize it, even if they don't make a decision for Christ, they see and they go, oh, okay, and you deal it on that aspect, they get better.
That's incredible. That's just very, very amazing to me. I mean, because it just showing that the necessity of a chaplain, because here they're struggling with this guilt, which really we all struggle with, but they're in an environment where that opportunity to do things that would cause you to feel very guilty is very prevalent. So
and see, that's an issue we don't even address it in the military. The idea about guilt, because you're making a value judgment.
Do you think that has something to do with some of the high depression and high suicide rates?
Oh, I know it does.
Yeah.
I've got examples of that I could tell you.
Yeah.
So
John, you were going to share with us a little bit about what you share with some of the guys that you counsel and so forth.
Yeah, so the Navy doesn't pay me to evangelize, right? And so I don't go around, trying to, make people read tracts or. But when people come to me for help, oftentimes, well, every time I'll get to a point where I say, okay, I can give you some basic tools, I can give you some, communication skills, stress management, that kind of stuff. But really underlying this is a deeper issue, a deeper problem that the Bible addresses, which we want to hear it. I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist. I'm a chaplain, and so this is where I'm going to point you to. And 9 times out of 10, they say yes. And so I usually will take them to one of the places I take them to often is Romans 8, which is where I go often for myself. And I'll read to them Romans 8:31, familiar passage. What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? So Paul's asking a question there. If God is for you, then who can be against us? But the question implied there is, how do you know if God is for you or not?
Yeah.
And then he answers that. He says, he who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also with him graciously give us all things? And these sailors, these Marines, especially the young ones, they work hard. Yeah. They sometimes they go from a life of...
We deal with the cream of the crop of America. We really do.
Yeah.
Our young sailors, Marines,
yeah.
Just
they work hard
people.
And they get way underpaid. And it's a hard life. And they face a lot of questions, a lot of struggles, and so it's easy for them, a lot of pressures. It's easy for them to be overwhelmed by these things, and obviously these truths apply to everybody. But
yeah.
I found this to be really powerful. Is that if God has already given you the thing most precious to Himself, His own Son, why would we doubt that anything else that He allows in our life is going to be Him abandoning us? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if we can see the cross, if they can find their identity in the cross, then that empowers them, and it gives them a context for all their suffering after that, to say that, okay, if God has already proven His love for me more than anyone else could ever prove their love for me,
yeah,
then that means that any trial that I'm going through now is allowed by God because He loves me, and it has a purpose. It gives a purpose to their pain. It gives
absolutely.
a purpose.
That's a big thing. It's not meaningless.
It's not an accident. It's not random.
Yeah.
And that's been something I go almost every day. I tell somebody that.
I think that's a powerful way to end the show. My guests tonight have been chaplains Bob Freiberg and John Freiberg. Just two awesome guys. Please keep them in your prayers. Guys, thanks for being on the show tonight.
Thank you.
Huge blessing. And please be praying for our veterans and our military. Like these guys have said, they need it. and they're working hard. So we'll see you next week, 4 to 5 p.m. Thanks for being here with us. Have a great night.
Educate for Life with Kevin Conover, a regular feature on AM 1170 The Answer. Learn more about Kevin and his work online at his website, educateforlife.com. That's educateforlife.com. You'll find great resources, ideas, and even video classes there to help you grow and understand what in the world is happening. Encourage your friends to listen for great guests and intelligent analysis of the stories that shape our lives. Educate for Life with Kevin Conover, exclusively on AM 1170 The Answer.
Bring your tithe and bring your shame. Bring your guilt and bring your pain. Don't you know that's not your name?